Good morning, everyone. This is David with Galvin Property Services, back here on another project. This one is kind of interesting because this is a lot that's getting ready to be put on the market. The homeowner had it cleared previously last year. That's why you see the blackberries aren't so tall. I mean, this stuff right here is probably like three feet tall, a meter tall. This stuff right here is a little shallower. Basically is that they had plans back in the day to use this lot to build a home, and that didn't really work out for them. So they had the permits and everything, the plans, but because it didn't work out, now they just need to sell the lot. So what we're going to be doing today is clearing out basically that area by the road, just making it look nice, clearing down all the blackberries so a prospective buyer can see all of the territory according to the plans and stuff. We have this stuff right here. We're gonna push this back a little bit, and then this right here was cleared out last year. There's another business owner who came out with a tractor actually, and he did a pretty good job cutting it up. But as you can see, a year later, blackberries are starting to spring up again. And from what the property owner asked me, he only asked me to go about halfway, because everything down under that is basically, it doesn't really matter for them. They just kind of want this main area cleared up. We're going to push this back a little bit just so you know, it's not going to encroach here. Same thing with here. We're going to push that back a little bit, clear a little bit of a trail, but it should be a pretty cool project. So we got this little trail cut out. This way there's a lot easier access than going around through those trees and stuff. People know right away how to go in here. One thing I just wanted to point out real quick is that if you notice, this area right here sits a lot lower than this area right here. The reason for that is because when you have a tractor with a brush hog, for example, it's very limited to how low it can go. So in this case, you have all these old blackberry roots popping up. Oops, I'll find a little better example, like this right here. So these stubs, they're still up. Like this one, for example, it was cut, but then it started to regrow from a different little branch. Same thing over here, similar story. Basically, I just kind of want to show the difference between using a brush mulcher, brush cutter, or weed eater, or whatever, with a mulching blade, is that you can actually get a lot lower to the ground. It does have its pluses. For example, the mulch is a little bit more finer. If you look at this stuff, it's a lot, just a lot of long pieces that are all kind of piled up on each other. Here, you know, you still have a few long pieces, but it's a lot finer. The only minus is that when you have, for example, garbage like this, I don't even know what that is, but it's garbage, and then you have, you know, little rocks like these, that will really eat the mulching blade up. That's just the biggest downside to this. But I kind of wanted to just show that, you know, like you can take a look at that. It looks like you have like a shaggy carpet and then just kind of a flat carpet over here. Alright, so we're at the end of the video. We got everything done. Let's just take a little tour of everything we got done. So this is a little trail we made. Now you have easy access straight to the main portion of the property. We cut back this wall right here just so, you know, it looks a lot more appealing. This area got mulched up. There was a little bit of poison ivy in there. Unfortunately, I got hit right under the lip and it just burning. But this wall we cut back probably another 2 to 3 feet. As you can see, that portion right there is where we stopped, about halfway point by the request of the owner. Cut this back a little bit, just to, same thing, keep it back so it doesn't fall into here. This area over here, I think in the beginning of the video it came through this side, but we mulched this area up. Got a nice little clearing back here. All this area under the trees cleared up. I believe this area right here, I'm not sure exactly where it starts, but I guess basically from that bramble right there probably to one of these trees or so is where they had the estimate for a drainage field. So this is cleared up just in case they need to take any tests, do any samples of the soil and stuff. And then this portion up here wasn't too bad. I really like it when it's light blackberries like this. Like, that's the easiest easy stuff, and like people say, easy money. And that part is easy money because it just kind of shreds through it. When you have stuff taller like that, it's a lot more work. And as you can see in the distance, that over there is Puget Sound. So it's a pretty nice view. I believe this entire property stretches down all the way to another adjacent road down there. So technically all these trees and stuff are on the same property, except for that stuff over there. But there's still a view of that area. I think maybe if a future owner comes up, they can just kind of top off part of those trees, because I can see the water from here. So it's just a matter of probably topping off, like, I guess something like that, and then you have a view of the water. Same thing, mountains back there. So it's a pretty nice lot, and was a fairly easy project. So thank you for watching. I appreciate you taking your time to watch the video. If you really like the video, please drop a like, consider subscribing, share it with your friends, and thank you for watching. Good night, God bless, bye.